basically HTML is what quite literally all websites render through. All of them, we see this visual interface, the website renders through the HTML language. There's no second language. So basically, when you use the internet, there's a couple of computers involved. The first computer is, of course, your computer. And this is called the front end. So when you call a website, your computer interacts with what is called the backend. So your computer is the front end, and then another computer is going to be the backend, which I'm just going to call the cloud. Because basically what the cloud means is it's a series of computers that are usually hosted on Google or Amazon or other providers, DigitalOcean, etc., that run your website. So when your computer goes to passionclass.co or any website, google.com, etc., it sends. There's actually some other intermediate steps. There's actually another computer that translates passionclass.co to an individual IP address. We don't really care about that. That's not so important for our purposes. But your computer interacts with the cloud, which is where the backend's stored. So basically, your computer sends a request to the cloud and says, hey, send me this website. The backend loads this information, loads all this stuff that's here, and sends what you see back to your computer. Okay. However, so that seems obvious enough. When I click here, for example, I want to show you when I first load, for example, Passion Class, and the reason I'm using this is because this is a website that I have built. When you load Passion Class, you can kind of see this delay. You can see when you click it, there's this kind of delay of it loading. It takes a second and then it kind of appears. But then if I click, for example, and let me do the programming one just because that's relevant. So if I click here, there's not really going to be a delay. It should load close to instantly. Actually, there's two. That's not also true. There's going to be a transition that loads instantly. We'll look at the header part, and there's going to be the data that loads a little later. But like if you watch the header, when I click Passion Class, the header doesn't change. It loads instantaneously. So but if I refresh the page, for example, it takes a second. It kind of goes white, and then it takes a second until that's properly loaded. So what's happening there? What's happening there is your computer is accessing sending a request to the server and saying, send me this information. The server does this and sends the entire application back. So if I come back here, this is all preloaded. If I switch to another part of the application, it's pretty much all preloaded. Then basically all the code that you see here, when I scroll down on this machine, or if I access another part, for example, let me actually come here. If I want to change my cookie settings here at the bottom, for example, I click this. This code is all run on your machine. So basically that means that the machine that is processing the information right now is your machine. And that is all called the front end. So your personal laptop or your iPhone or whatever, that's the front end. And there is code that runs on there. And that code is HTML. There's HTML. There can also be more, but definitely HTML. And HTML is what makes this visualization appear. The next, on the back end, for example, if I click this, I mean, every website is different, right? It's designed, it depends on how it works. But for example, any information that you do, like if you're on your Facebook or your Instagram and you upload a photo, you're gonna take code from your computer. Like when you click upload, there's going to be some process that runs on your individual machine that is, again, the front end that says grab, like it has the button, displays the button, upload photo, you upload the photo, then your machine is going to send the photo to Facebook, to Instagram. Here, this is me, this is to Passion Class's backend server. and save it there. So basically, if you turn off your computer and turn it back on, the next time you go to this website, it's still there. And that's because it's not because it's saved on your local computer, you have it saved on the series of computers in the cloud. So that's not that complicated. It's kind of foundational, but I want to explain it because what we're doing here, what we're going to do today is do some HTML coding, and HTML runs entirely on the front end. So HTML runs entirely on your computer. So when your computer receives an HTML file, that's what causes this stuff to appear on the web page. Like all this stuff that you see here, this is all HTML. HTML is parsed by the browser. So browser being Google Chrome, Firefox, it used to be Internet Explorer, although that's really old now. Anything like that, Safari, and all of those browsers know how to parse HTML. And it should, in theory, their standardized rules, it should, in theory, parse the same way on all browsers. Of course, as a web developer, I can tell you there are times that sometimes one browser implemented it slightly differently, and sometimes you get errors on particular browsers. But in theory, all browsers are supposed to parse the HTML the same way. So let me pause there. That was very, very basic, and I hope it's clear. But the reason I say that is it is directly relevant. So any questions so far on what HTML is or how this basic relationship between your computer and the backend works? Okay, cool. Cool. Sounds good. Okay, so what I want to do now is actually look at some HTML. So we're going to come back over here. So on any website, this is cool. You can, I don't know if you'll do this. I do this all the time, but you can actually on your personal computer, as I mentioned, HTML is run all on your computer. It's not run, it's given from the back end. So basically the backend computer sends your computer the information that it's supposed to display, but then your computer is the one that processes that information and says, okay, this is how it's going to display. Because of that, you have complete ability to change that information if you want. And that's what we're actually going to do at least at the beginning. So you can either watch me, or if you've got two monitors or you can somehow split your screen, you're welcome to do this in parallel on your own machine, and that would be ideal. But you can right-hand click on any element in a web browser, in most web browsers. If you don't see it, then let me know. So it would actually be great if you do it. But if you come here, like let's click on this element. This is untersuchen, that's written in German, I'm sorry. But on any of your machines, it will say, assuming they're in English, it will say inspect or inspect element. So you go to any web page you want. It can be Google. Again, I'm using the Passion class as the example. And then I click inspect or inspect element. What's going to pop up is what is called the inspector. Not a very clever name, but it shows this information here. I'm actually going to shrink this all down. This is going to be very small text that is probably going to be hard to read via Zoom, but you can do this. And I would actually recommend, let me actually just post, if you want to go to passionclass.co, so we're all on the same page. And we have some introductions here. Wonderful. Hello. Nice to meet both of you. Alan, I'm glad to hear this. So this is going to be, I think, Alan, this might be basic for you, but that's more than fine. Corey, welcome. Glad to hear you. Glad to have you here. So yeah, if you go to the web page, then all this information here, what you see here is the HTML for the web page. Okay. So this here is all HTML. It looks kind of complicated. If you just look at it, it's like, what is going on here? So how HTML works is let me come back to my PowerPoint. It is always, always, always a tree. Okay, so what that means is how do I do this? Okay, here we go. So HTML is always a tree, which means you basically have a hierarchy of elements. So the first element is always this HTML tag here. This is not stuff you really need to know. I'm just explaining the basics. Like it won't really matter for you so much in the future. When I say this, the first element is an HTML tag. Understanding that it is a tree, that is very important. And basically what happens then is, and under the HTML tag, at some point, you're going to have the body tag, which basically means that this is the part where you're going to actually add your website. You can have other things in there. For example, it's going to have some scripts that can run that if you want to make the page more dynamic in a way that HTML can't, plain HTML can't. There's other tags that can fit in there, but that's not really relevant for beginners. The body tag is the part that is going to contain the pretty much everything that you see on the page. So here, for example, you can see on my page quite literally everything, and you know that because it's highlighted in blue when you go over the tag. It quite literally everything is contained in this body tag. And that's also, by the way, one of the cool things about this inspector is if you can see exactly what each element represents. So if I go over this in HTML, you can see this HTML right here corresponds to this particular element that you see on the page. So that's one of the things I really like about it. But so everything it's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. So we start from the body that contains literally everything. As we go down, I have here, for example, a header tag. This header tag corresponds to this element right here, this red element at the top of the page. And within this header tag, if I open this up by clicking this little thing right here, there's other elements that are contained within the header tag. So each of these are elements contained within the header tag. So let me come back over here and show you how that tree structure actually looks. In the body, for example, in my website, we have a header. I'm actually going to shrink these because otherwise it's not going to quite fit. We have a header, for example. So that and then the body, for example, contains a header, but it doesn't just contain the header. I can close out of the header. It also contains what I called the page body. So this is everything pretty much else other than the header, except I believe the footer, is here at the bottom. So in my page on passionclass.co, I have three elements. I have a header, a page body, and a footer. And so that's kind of how this tree structure, as I mentioned, works. And again, every single thing on the page is going to line up to a higher element. Okay, I'm kind of going through theoretical stuff, and that's going to take maybe 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes. And then after that, no worries. We're going to work, we're going to have you guys do some HTML on your own. So yeah, there's just kind of this nice tree structure within the header. And I'm just going to break down the header because that's all that really matters. Or it's just the concept I'm trying to convey. So I basically have the logo. I have actually some empty elements, or an empty element that's for spacing. Here, then I have actually an element to change your language. So I have like a language change element. Then I have another empty element for spacing. There's other ways of doing it. That's you don't have to worry about that exactly. There's other ways you could do that. Then I have here a currency element, actually, if you want to change the prices from USD to euro, that's what that currency element is for. Another element for spacing, and then I kind of have the menu element. So what is Passion Class, blah, blah, blah. This opens up if you click that menu element. So that's what I have basically here. So I'm actually going to ignore these spacing elements because there's actually ways around that. I don't remember why I chose to do it that way. But I'm going to actually copy these here and put them, put them essentially coming out of a header. So we have the logo. We had, what is the next thing? We had a language. We have the language element. We have the currency element. And then finally, we have a menu. Okay, and again, this is just arbitrary. This is my particular website. I'm just trying to show you how HTML works, and that's why I'm using this concrete example of this website that I have built. But every single website, and of course, under page body, there's going to be under page body, there's going to be a whole tree as well. Under footer, there's going to be a tree. And again, within each of these elements, I'll actually even go one layer deeper. Let me look at the logo. So if I open this logo tag, here I have two elements as well. The first element is the actual logo image. And the second element is the logo text. And then again, if I go into the logo text, the way I actually have it for stylistic reasons is I have a link element, and then each letter is actually its own element as well. So the PASSIONCLASS, those are all different elements. So it just goes, it goes deeper and deeper. Typically, letter by letter, you're not going to have an element like this. These are not each individual elements. We don't have to worry about the particular reasons I chose to do it there. Okay, I do have some questions here in the chat. So let me read these. How did I open the back page of codes? Okay, so first of all, I will do my best to check the chat. Please, I appreciate the verbal communication. So open any web browser. This is important, and this is something I would love us all to do. If you're on mobile, it'll be a little tricky, but if you're not, it should work fine. So I'm going to passionclass.co. That's my website. I'm using that as the example. You can either start here. I'm trying to think. You can either start here, or you could go to the particular class that I have here, and that's just, you could maybe go that, so we have the same one open. It doesn't really matter. Anyways, so choose any website you want. You can also go to Google. It doesn't have to be the website I'm working on. I'm just doing that because I know this code very well, because I'm the writer of it. So you right-hand click anywhere on the page, any element on the page, and then you click inspect or inspect element. If your browser doesn't have that, please let me know, because you do have to show that. But any element on the page, inspect or inspect element. Mine's written in German, but inspect or inspect element. Yes, thank you. Okay, my laptop doesn't have this. Okay, so Firefox will have it. Okay, so Firefox should have it right off the bat. You might not see it immediately on Safari. There is something you have to do, for example, on Safari to open that up. Let me look at Chrome, see what it's called in Chrome. Different browsers, like in Safari, I know you have to manually enable it the first time. I can't quite remember how I did that. So let's click here, see what it looks like on Chrome. So inspect. Yeah, on Chrome it should appear. So if it's not happening on whatever browser you have, I would say take a look at try another web browser. So if you have Chrome, switch to Firefox. If you're using Safari, there's a way you have to manually enable it the first time, but any browser should have this. Truly, any browser should have this. I am going to point out here. So this one, you can see when I clicked Chrome, it switched to a mobile view. That's because I had previously been developing here on mobile. I'm going to show you this cool thing. There's this toggle here, and this will switch you between mobile and desktop use. But I'm going to go back to Firefox because that is my browser of choice. They all are just a little different, and you just have to learn the tool as it is. So SL, if you weren't able to open that, I'm sorry, but I would say try a different browser. If not, then Google it for your particular browser, how to open the inspector. And I'm going to inspector in the chat. Wonderful. So let's actually start by changing this. And again, because this code runs entirely on our computer, there's things I can do that are like anything I write here is not going to affect your guys' image of it. So if I change this title for fun to April Fool's Day, which is not April Fool's Day, but I can double click inside the HTML and actively change it. I can change it to April Fool's Day. The other thing I can do if I want, I'm here on the element, I can delete that whole element. It's just go, oops, well, there, I accidentally deleted this text, which we'll get to. I didn't actually delete the whole element. I just deleted some text out of it, but I can delete the whole element and it's gone. Similarly, like let me do that on the logo. So if I come up here to this logo, this is within, as we expect. I'm probably moving very quickly and I'm sorry for that. So let me close this out so it's a little clearer what I'm doing here. So I'm here in the HTML. So I'm in the body. Then I went to the header section, which we saw in my individual website was just one of the 3 main sections. Any website can be structured differently. Within that header, I have the logo, and I can tell where I am because it shows up highlighted here on my page. So I have this logo. Now, there's actually 2 things. First, I'm just going to delete it at first. Oh, nope, I didn't delete it correctly. Let me delete. What I did there was actually I deleted what it says class here, which is what contains styling information. It's what makes it appear the way it does. And we'll get to that in a few minutes. But I actually wanted to delete the whole element to show you this. So let me delete this whole element and it's gone. And now this is how the web page looks. Okay, great. So again, all I've done right now is delete some elements from an existing web page, but you can click around on it and have some fun with that. And again, you can change the text. If you want to change my name to something offensive, you could click in here and change it from with Joe to with Mr. Joe, for example, and have it be like that. So that's the basic, the very basics I wanted to start with. So let me pause here and see if there's any questions before we do some other stuff.
I have a question.
Please.
Is there like a way to, I guess like type in a certain specific like category within the coding to access it easily, or you just have to like kind of go through it yourself?
I didn't understand the question. So what is it that you're trying to access? This here?
Like, say for instance, like a certain part of the HTML, like is there an option where you can just search it up?
Great question. Thank you.
Mhm.
Answer. On my browser, yes, and I believe this is true for most browsers. So for example, if I refresh this page, all I did right there was refresh the page. Because those changes that we made, I didn't save anything, and I can only save it to my individual machine. Long story short, when I refresh that page, all the changes I make come back, or excuse me, are deleted, and it comes back to the original version. So now we're at the original version. Let's say I was like, I want to make this change with this with Joe section. I find what's there, and I would go type here at the top. I'm sorry, my machine is in German. I apologize for that. But if you type in with Joe here, at the top in Firefox, it might be different in Chrome. I'm not 100% sure. It immediately jumps to the first instance where it finds that text, which is here. So that popped up here. Similarly, if I wanted to, oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say thank you. That's all.
Okay. So if you wanted to look at, for example, if you want to look at this meeting times section, let's type in meeting times. And then that shows up here, that it jumps immediately to that section. The other thing is sometimes if you want to get, you can then kind of break it down within there. Another thing is, and you unfortunately all the tags yet. I know these tags. Like if I wanted to find the first image on the page, like if I want to find, for example, the background, if I wanted to add, like if you take a look at the page, there's always these elephants. That's my background. So that doesn't even appear on the page. First of all, I know those image titles are called, I know the name of those images are called elephant, and that's because I built that, so that's lucky. But I know that the elephant is in the URL, so I can type in elephant and it finds that element. The other thing I can do is if I want to find the first image on the page that is different, or if I want to find the first image on the page, I could, for example, type in image. And I didn't like that actually, so I'm going to go to the next one. Is it not? There we go. Here we go. That's what I was actually expecting, is the first image on the page is this little IMG tag that's image. And that's the first one. I had to actually click it 5 times. It's showing it's the 5th image. That's because it's kind of, there was some prior information to that. That's all included in the metadata. But yeah, so there is a way to search through it to answer your question. And again, how this is going to work. So HTML, let me actually take one more step back here again real quick and say, like, HTML, it is a language, hypertext markup language. And just like any language, it takes time to learn. So if you want to learn some Spanish, it's going to take time. I can tell you can learn HTML a lot faster than you can learn Spanish. So Spanish, if you want to learn some Spanish, it's going to probably take you a year before you're good at it. HTML, you can get there in a couple of weeks. But today what we're doing is hola and cómo estás, and that's about, we're doing a little more than that too. But, there's going to be stuff that you're not going to get it all, and that's more than okay. My goal is for this session is to get your feet wet and have you have the kind of basics so that you can, 1, keep playing around yourself, and 2, build in future sessions. Yes, I hear we have a question.
Oh, yeah. First of all, thank you for everyone trying to help me. How we can learn easily the sequences or the secret of the coding language, because it's like I learn, but then I forget what I have learned.
Well, so what I would say is HTML is a good place to start. HTML is, in my view, I think this is pretty universal, the easiest place to start. But it's just like anything that practice makes better. And if you took some Spanish in college 10 years ago, you're not going to probably speak Spanish today. It's just an issue of, when you learn it, you'll learn it a whole lot faster the second time. But just like most things, if you're not practicing it, you do lose it gradually. So, I would say build something, and that's the best way to both build skills and maintain skills. But, I don't have a secret for how you can magically remember everything. It's just like any other skill, just like any language, practice makes better. And, and the more recent that practice is, the more you're going to be good at it today. Okay, cool. So, sorry, any other questions before I kind of move on to the next little thing?
No.
Cool. Okay. So now we've talked about HTML as this tree of elements, which it is. And that's how it's funny, because when we look at a web page, we don't really perceive a tree of elements. We kind of perceive kind of a linear, it goes down linearly is kind of how we perceive the web page, that it just gradually, goes down. We kind of perceive it in the same way that we perceive a book. You know, when you write a book, you just kind of read from right to left, and that's how we kind of perceive the web page as well. However, if you really think about, for example, how a book is written, usually the author has something to say and they write in the table of contents, like chapter 1 is going to be this point. You have a whole book and it's kind of broken down into chapters, and chapter 1's about this, and chapter 2's about this, and chapter 3's about this. And then within chapter 1, he makes his first point, and then his second point and his third point, and the same thing in chapter 2. So it's kind of the same concept in that way. But so we've seen that we have here a tree of elements. The most important element that in HTML that you can honestly do about 80% of the stuff you want to with is this div element, D-I-V, and I'm going to write that in the chat. If that's the only element you ever learn, that's okay, actually. you know, it's not going to be the most beautiful code you can possibly have. But you can do a lot with a div element, with a div element. Div basically means divider. It's to make a section. So this header, for example, could be a div. Basically, I think of a div as a box. So anytime you see any box on a web page, this is a box, this is a box, this header is a box, this here is a box, this image is a box, it's just rounded. It's just literally, it is quite literally a box with rounded corners. That's how it works in the HTML. And even these, you can't quite see it, but you can't see it, but there's actually an invisible box around these elements. Yep, do we have a question?
I have a question about, so you said HTML, the easiest or one of the basics is div, but I missed what you called it. One of the div is what?
Sorry, thank you.
Okay.
No, I understand exactly. Thank you for asking that. So what I mean by that was not clear. It's each of these elements. These are not written in technical terms. This is kind of written as I conceptualize it. So the web page is built out of a header, a page body, and a footer. Okay. And then I have, for example, here, you know, a background image and an intro image, something like that. That's how I think of it. The computer thinks of it in a different way. The computer, these are just random elements. And the element, basically div, is the foundational element in HTML. So there's different kinds of elements. One kind of, a different kind of element, for example, actually is a header. You can write it just as well with a div. There's just slightly different, your browser renders it slightly differently. Another element, for example, is an image, IMG. So on the top left corner there, that logo is actually an image element, an IMG element, and it's actually wrapped within an A tag. An A tag means a hyperlink. So if I click on this, for example, because it's wrapped in that A tag and I've specified where it's going to go, it takes you back to the first page. And that's just because that's where I've specified. But the point is, it's a hyperlink. When I click the A tag, it takes me to the first page. And that's how that works.
Thank you.
So at the div, there's just different elements. In div, you could literally write everything. Not everything. You could literally write about 90% of this web page entirely with divs. So a div basically means a box. It literally means divider, but it's essentially a square box, and that's all it is. So this web page is divided into this square box, and then within this square box, we've got a square box that contains the image. We've got a square box that contains this text. We've got a square box that contains this tag or this element. When you click on this element, it opens up a square box that contains, or rectangular box is what I really mean, a rectangular box that contains all of these. Each of these is their own rectangular box. when I click the menu, it opens this rectangular box that contains, I believe, I don't know if these are done. I can't remember if these are written in rectangular boxes or if they just have text. I can't quite remember that. But for example, as I mentioned with this image, even this image of me that looks like a circle, because it is a circle, all that actually is a square box. I'm actually going to show you. It's a square box that has styling that that makes it around. Like when I hover over it, you can see how, I don't know if I'm going to zoom in. Oops, zoom in on the wrong thing.
Those specific class sessions that you pick one of the two sections.
that was my video starting. This square box, you can see that it's actually a square box with the image or with the sides rounded. And that's all it really is. So almost everything on every web page is a rectangular box. And those are called divs. I mean, again, this says image here. If you look in the HTML over here, it says IMG, it's an image tag. I think I could just as well make it in, I'd have to set it as a background. I can't change it dynamically. Like I can't change it right now. But it could just as well be a div as an image. Yeah, so almost everything on your web page is just a combination of divs. So let me think about this for a second. So what I'm actually going to do now, if I were writing a web page from scratch, and that is actually what I want to do now. Unfortunately, we don't really have a great way to render. The problem is I didn't want to require that everybody have all this software in order to come to this session. So let me actually delete this. So now I've just deleted pretty much everything on the page. And now, so the HTML on this page is now entirely empty. What I'm going to do now is we now have just an empty thing of HTML. Was that clear what I just did? On my local computer, I deleted all the HTML that was on the web page that we saw.
Okay, I did see that, but how did you delete it?
So let me refresh the page.
Okay, sorry. I'm
No,
on my
no
phone
problem.
because I couldn't log in on my laptop for some reason, and I'm like making everything big and small, so I just missed it. Sorry.
No, I get it. No problem. No problem. So I'm in my inspector. I'm in the inspector, and then literally I just click on, actually on this web page, I click on this. You could search for root, for example, if you wanted. What should appear is this element here, and then I literally just click the delete button on my keyboard, and it deletes it.
Gotcha. Thanks.
And then the reason I'm normal, usually you would start with a blank slate. You would start with, I don't actually code inside the browser itself. When I code, I use a different program. I use a different program when I code. I'm just doing it here in the browser because I'm not assuming that everybody's going to have those programs installed. So this is a way that we can do this together, and it should instantly render.
Well,
Then
can you share what the program is? Because I might have it. I'm gonna play around with it later today. So
yeah, well, you can use a different things. I use, and this is I think the most common one today. It's called Visual Studio Code.
wait, say it again because your voice kind of cracked up.
Yeah.
Visual
Studio
okay.
Code. And so that is a great program, and it gives you a bunch of like coloration stuff, so you can kind of get a feeling of if you're doing it right or wrong. You might need a tutorial for that, but I want to code it here so we can kind of see the results instantaneously and dynamically. Oh shoot, I think I deleted one element too many. I'm going to come back here. It's last time.
Yeah, but there is two Visual Studio Code, one for free and one for payment.
I would take the free one.
Yeah.
Free should work just fine.
Yeah.
So now I'm in my HTML. So where you're gonna edit is within the body. I can zoom in so this is larger for you guys actually. Hopefully that's better now. I just realized I could do that. Oh man, I'm sorry, I didn't think of that earlier. So you'll notice every element in HTML is opened by the body of the web page is opened, but they're all between brackets. That's how we know that this is meant to be HTML. It's between brackets, and it has an opening element or an opening tag. Actually, it's called an opening tag and a closing tag. And when something has the opening tag and the closing tag, and the only difference is that you got this backslash here. When you have the opening tag and the closing tag together, then the browser knows that's an element. So I can come in here, come inside this tag, and actually I literally don't even have to write any HTML. I could say like, hi guys, and that should appear when I click out of it. So it closes, it's not appearing. Yeah, so right here it is. Hi guys, this has now rendered as raw text. This is then appearing in the top left corner of the page. And whatever font that is, whatever font size that is, whatever font that is, that's all set to my system defaults. So whatever my computer is individually set as is how it's gonna appear. I can come back here, I'm right-hand clicking, and then I'm clicking Edit HTML. I'm gonna have, for example, a div tag. I'm just gonna add this in a div tag. It should probably not change the appearance at all. I'm not expecting any changes in appearance by doing this. Let's see. So let me close out of that now. Oh, there we go. So it looks the exact same. What though is if I add another div tag that says hi guys. Okay. So those they're on separate lines, you'll notice. There's automatically it's automatically assuming I want it on different lines. But two, I can add style information here to this element. And actually, an easier way to do it rather than writing it in the HTML, I'm just realizing this. Most browsers, if I then pull up this part, it's a little easier. Let me make this the background of this div. Let me just make it, actually, let me change from background to background color. This is the very first one I'm doing. Background color is, oh shoot, sorry, messed that up. Background color is red. And now this div, it says style background color :red is corresponding, obviously, to this here. This one, we can do the same thing, but instead of making it, we'll make the background color, background color blue, blue. And now this one has a blue background color. Now that's pretty hard to read. That hi guys, that's pretty hard to read. So I'm actually going to change the color of the text, which is through color. And these are just words that you learn gradually through using HTML. Like I know to adjust the text color, I type color. To adjust the background color, I type background -color. They're just things that you learn over time. Google is your best friend here, or any, actually I don't even use Google, I use DuckDuckGo. But any search browser, Bing, whatever, is your best friend. So color is white. Now I know that now my text for the second div is white, and it should be bigger. I'm going to make these bigger really quick so you can see this better. And I'm zoomed in really big. So that's what that looks like. This is at 500%, so it's actually not that big. This text is small, but that's okay. And like I said, let's say I didn't know, hey, I want to change the text color. I just type in to Google or my search browser. I'm actually DuckDuckGo, change text color HTML. It should come up pretty quickly. How to change the text color in free HTML or in HTML. It's gonna, I don't know why there's so much information here, but anyways, it's saying color equals this. Man, I don't even like how they're doing this. Oh, you know what I want to do? I actually want to say I want to say CSS. That's fine. I'll do this in just 1 second. So to change, working right now. Okay, here we go. Now it showed up, and I can see. Okay, the property is color : blue, color : green. So that's how I get it. Like most of the times for things you want to do, you're not going to know how do I do that. For example, well, the next thing I want to do is add spacing between these divs. Or specifically, let's say I want this text to be, this G ends literally right at the bottom of this text. Let's say I want to add some padding underneath. I'm going to just tell you padding is the word. So I can do padding bottom because I want to add some padding to the bottom. And then let's say I make it 10 pixels, 10 px. That's what that'll look like. I can make it 100 pixels. I could make it 50 pixels. I could make it actually negative 10 pixels if I wanted. Oh, why did that not appear? Is that not possible? That is usually possible. Maybe it's not possible with padding. But, and basically what this padding bottom does is add 10 pixels to the bottom. I can similarly do padding top and make it 10 pixels. And now it adds the text from the top. I can change it from top to left, and it pads the text from the left. So there's different ways that you can different things that you can do. And again, these are things that you'll learn with time. And they're things that you'll learn, of course, you're not going to think the word padding bottom is, what's creating this here. It's literally kind of a Googling process where you say, how do I add space to the bottom of a div HTML or CSS? And I'm actually going to write CSS because that's correct. That's actually not pat. And then it goes here. It says CSS padding bottom property. And that's the one that we're actually looking for example. Now, let me pause here. And then I'm going to explain what CSS here is, but I'm going to see if there's any questions. We good? Awesome. Okay. You know what? Actually, let me take a 30-second break. I need some water. My voice is getting parched. I'll be back in 30 seconds. All right. So now I've mentioned CSS twice and not explain what it is. So what is CSS? So any web page, let me come back over here. Let me go back to Passion Class. Anyway, so I zoomed in, as we saw, I zoomed in 150%, so it'd be nice and big for us. But so any web page is comprised really of three elements. There's the HTML, which is all of these blocks. As we mentioned, all of these blocks, it's this tree structure. It's this tree structure of elements that makes up the web page. It's our table of contents and all the content of a book. It's basically the book. Now, if we think about a book, if we compare it to a book, actually, I don't think we need that analogy. So it's basically, it's the structure of elements. It's this block, which contains these blocks, which, this contains these blocks, and so on and so forth. So that's the HTML. That's HTML. The CSS is called cascading style sheets. Said that very badly. I'm going to write it in the chat. Cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets. That's called CSS. What does CSS do? It contains the styling information. So for example, why is this here red? Because of CSS. So the HTML is the block itself, is the box itself, and CSS contains all the styling information for that block. So it contains make this block red. It contains make this text white and this text black, for example. It contains the information, I don't know if you can see, let me get actually, yeah, you can see that this box here has a white background with a transparency of, I don't know what it is, 80% or something, but with the background image, there's a background image and there's a white box that's partially transparent that this text is contained within. So that CSS specifies the text is black. The CSS specifies the background is white and 50% transparent. The CSS specifies which font this text is written in. The CSS will, as I mentioned, specifies this is red. It's going to specify, what else is it going to specify? It's going to specify this background is gray, for example. So any styling information that you have is CSS. Okay. And that's the same thing here. What we really wrote here, we're writing it directly into the HTML in this example, and we may stick with that today. We'll see. But basically what we're actually writing is CSS. So this information here, this background color is blue. The color of the text itself is white. It's 10 pixels. The padding on the left is 10 pixels. This is all CSS information. And that we have a div, a container, a rectangular box, that is HTML. Okay. Another thing that you can do with CSS is I can say, hey, I want my width of the box to be not 10%, let's make it 50%. Width is 50%. And so now the width of this box is 50% of the containing element, actually. So because this, I'm actually going to I'll show that in this. Nah, I don't need to show that. That's a little complex, but it's basically, it's 50% of the element that it's nested in. So actually I will show that really quick. So if I add now if I edit this box, and instead of writing, hey guys, I have another div, because you know how we talked about that tree structure. This is sudden that we're getting to HTML 2.0 already. I'm moving quick. So I add two more boxes that say, hey guys, within this box. I'll actually explain exactly how that works in just one second. So what do I have here now? I have here this first element here that says, hey guys. And then I have this second element that actually doesn't contain any raw text at all. What is nested underneath this raw element, like what is nested underneath between these two blocks, between the div tags, is here in this one raw text. Hi guys. What is nested in this div element is actually two other div elements. Okay, and they contain the raw text. So what we've done here now in this example is all this styling information is applying to this div, this whole div here. And this div contains two other divs, two other rectangular boxes, one here and one here. And because I've set the background color to be blue at this higher element, this whole element, this rectangular box that happens to contain both of these boxes, this rectangular box that happens to contain both of these boxes is the one that we set to blue. So this is the one that has the blue background. Okay. And I can actually, even within this for example, now if I specify a different background color within this div, within this smaller div, which I can do, make this background color green. Now this div, which is contained within this div, you know, this bigger div, has a green background color. And the other thing I can do, so I'm going to come back here. This one I had set it width to 50%. I'm going to return it to a width of 100%. And then I'm going to make, actually, yeah, and then I'm going to make this first element, have a width of 50%, which should actually not change how it looks because we can't even really tell unless I made a different background color. You can't even really tell, but you can tell when you hover over it, it shrunk. Now this green one, I'm going to do the same thing with 50%. So now you can see that the width of this green one is 50% of its containing element. And if I shrink now the width of this larger element, the width of the green one should also shrink with it. You see, oops, sorry. The width of the element, the width of the green one changes as well because it is, what we're doing is it's 50% of the element that encloses it. So that's a little more complex, but that kind of shows how this tree structure is relevant and why it's important. Because if I change the background size of this one, of this big div here, because this div is contained within this div, it's you know, the width is relative to its parent. The width is relative to its parent element, its parent div. So I have some questions here, I think. Cool. So let me pause here and recap what we've looked at so far. So HTML is the structure of the web page that is basically nothing other usually than a series of boxes. It's literally nothing other than a series of boxes. The other then the other thing that we've looked at is and it's a tree-like structure. So it's all of this whole page, all this information is contained with the body, is contained within this body tag. Within this body tag, we have 3 elements. We only have 2 elements, my mistake. So we have this top element that's here, that with a red background, and then we have a second element that's here with a blue background. And then within this blue background, that one contains 2 elements. That contains this first hi guys, and then it contains a second hi guys. Okay. Now let me change this one. I'm going to do our first hyperlink. And again, sorry, I want to finish that recap. And then so that's the HTML part. The CSS part, which in this case is actually written directly in the HTML. And I think we'll look into that shortly, how it doesn't have to be written directly into the HTML, but all this styling information is basically CSS. So this background color information, the width information. If I want to make a rounded edges, how do I make rounded edges? I genuinely can't remember. So we're going to do that. Rounded edges on a div. How to make a div with rounded corners. How do you make a div with rounded corners? Border radius. That's what it is. So I come back over here. I remember now it was called border radius. And that's the thing. You're just going to be asking Google, how do I make this look like that? That's going to be pretty common. Border radius. Let's make it 15 pixels. And now this green one is, now this green background element has this rounded border. That's what this border radius does. I can make it larger. It's going to turn more round probably, unless that was at the maximum, which apparently it was. Or I can make it less round. So I can bring it closer to a square. And back at 0, it's completely square. So I can make it more round. and less round with its border radius property, for example. So that's all CSS. All the styling information is CSS. One other tag I want to show you guys right on the bat or right off the bat on HTML is the A tag. So as I mentioned, the A tag is for hyperlinks. So we're just going to start by wrapping this div in an A tag. I'm not even specifying what the hyperlink is, so it's not going to do anything. But let me ask you guys, what is this realistically? So now I've wrapped this element in an A tag. Where is the hyperlink? It doesn't work now, but I've wrapped this element within an A tag. Where on the page am I going to click such that if the hyperlink worked, it would take me there?
Would you click hi guys with the green background?
Exactly. Very good. Yes. Anywhere. Very good. Anywhere in this, because this element is wrapped entirely within the A tag. This element with the green background is wrapped within the A tag. As soon as we make this A tag active, anywhere that you click within this green element will work with the hyperlink. And secondly, let me add a second tag in there. And we'll make this background color gray so it looks different. Now the A tag wraps both of these elements. Who was that? I'm going to ask you again. What would it now be? Where would you now click if the HTML were, excuse me, if the link were active? Where would you click? Where would you click such that the link works?
Either one or?
Perfect. Very good.
Okay.
Exactly right. Yes, because this A tag is this box, and both of these are within that A tag. So both of these will work, you know, anywhere in this block would the link will work for. So now let me actually make that work. Href, again, these are just things that you learn. You'll have to Google it. Okay, I'm doing a link, HTML link. What is the place where I write the link or something like that? You can Google that, but I can tell you, I know it's href because I've done this before. And let me do Passion class. Okay, so now I've added an href, which is basically that says this is where the link is supposed to go when you click on it. So now if I click on this link, I actually don't want to, I'm gonna open in a new tab because I don't want to lose this work. Link in a new tab, open link in a new tag. Now it takes me to Passion class. And so this link works. I don't want to click it because then we'll lose all this, we'll lose all this stuff where we're at right now. But then, you know, so if I click this link, I'm opening it in a new tab, but then this link works now. And that's because we've got the A tag wrapped around this element. But for example, if I click here, nothing happens. And that's because the A tag is wrapped around these two elements here.
Hey, I have a quick question. I'm following everything, so thanks for the great explanation. When you just put that href in and you put the passion class dot co, I don't know, for some reason, because I'm very new to this, why is it just, I mean, was it not supposed to be com or co is company? I don't know.
I'm glad thank you for asking. So this is a company I'm working on. I'm glad you're telling me that. The real website is passionclass.co. So if I want to make it Google,
Okay, I got
I'd have to write in google.com. It's actually .co. I'll tell you the reason I did that is because to get passionclass.com it was like $50,000 and passionclass.co was like 15. So that's why it's .co.
I would have made that same decision. Good job.
Yeah. So yeah, it's not, I didn't have a choice. I can't pay $50,000, right? So now I change it to google.com. That's google.com is the real website. Passionclass.co is the real website here. So if I now click on this link, it takes me to google.com, and that's because I've written google.com. So that was a great question though. So yeah, it's whatever the real website is what you would write here. Okay. let me think for 1 second. Does this meetup go till, is this meetup go for another 15 minutes or another 40 minutes? I think it's another
40.
It's another 40. Okay, perfect. And we are
I
going
mean,
to
I
be
said till 2 on my invite.
I'm sorry. Yeah, perfect. I don't know. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure we have time for the real CSS. Okay. So just give me 1 second here. Let's play around with the HTML just a little bit longer. So let's say we wanted to do I'm going to show you a couple of the most important elements. So let's change the, I mean, you can do this, and you know, if you haven't started building along with me yet, I know I'm kind of explaining, but you could build right along with me. The problem would be if you build directly in the browser, it doesn't save. So you would want to make sure that you save your code before you before you close out of this. So you can literally, just like a program, you can actually click File, Save. Again, mine's written in German, but you can click File, Save, and it will save your web page actually. So you can actually save your web page somewhere if you would like. So you can also, of course, come in here and copy and paste it and save it to a file. That works too. And actually, let me do that real quick. So let's do this. I just said this is all, I'm showing you HTML. I'm not writing anything here, or excuse me, I'm not saving anything here. Let's come over to this HTML, and all I'm doing right now is copying and pasting what's here in the browser. Okay, so all I've done is copied right now. That's all I've done there. I'm going to minimize this. I'm actually going to open my Visual Studio Code, but you can also do this with let me open a new window. I don't want to share that code. So we've got here now a new text file. I can paste in that HTML. You're getting all this CSS bonus. Okay, let me get rid of that. Sorry, let me try this again, because you're getting all this bonus stuff that came with, because we edited directly in the browser. You're getting some stuff that's pre-built in with Passion class. So I'm stop that. Let me edit the HTML here, just copy this body tag, because this is what we've really written together, is this body tag. Like, this head is all stuff that comes from the code that was on the web page that we started editing. So here's our body tag. That all looks good. That's what we're expecting. Zoom in on this again. My browser, or my tool, that's one of the reasons I recommend this tool, VS Code. It actually has a built-in formatter that makes it look really nice automatically, no extra work. So that's fine, but you don't technically need that. The one thing that you do have to do is, so this body, I think this is all stuff we've written together. It's just written inside this body tag. I'm going to add in an HTML tag. So everything actually technically has to be wrapped in an HTML tag. So the front and the back of the site, it has to be wrapped in an HTML tag. So that's all I've done here. Other than this is the code that we had. So now I'm going to save this code, and I'm going to save it to my desktop and say HTML tutorial. It's a .html file. So HTML tutorial.html, saving that to my desktop. Then you can't see my desktop, but all I'm doing is literally opening the file. Oops, I'm sorry. What did I do? Okay. Where is the file? Here we go. Here it is. I'm dragging it into the browser. Now it's showing, this is how it's rendering. Why is it not rendering as we see it here? Oh, it is rendering as we see it here. My mistake. Why does this look different than this? It's zoomed in. That's why it looks different. And as I mentioned, now it's truly using the browser defaults. I'm sorry about that. So here, you're actually getting because I started at passionclass.co and started editing directly from passionclass.co, some like this font is actually coming from, this is the default, this is the same font, for example, as you can see here. Like this font here is this font. And so, and like I have HTML, I have a CSS that's actually specifying don't have any padding, have 0 padding. This first element has apparently some automatic padding built in. So this is actually what you really should be seeing. This is because I actually didn't delete. It looks like I had some CSS included in this header. Let me actually delete that right now. Now it's going to look the same. So that's just stuff that it came from passionclass.co. And that's why it actually looks slightly different. And that's the point of the CSS. The CSS is very important because it changes how things look. As we can also see here, the text color for the link defaults to blue, and we've all seen that before, that link text colors default to blue. I actually want to say, let's say I want this color to be white, even though it's even though it's a link. I think I can specify text color white. Yes, and I have to do that kind of at that A level, however. And that's just because there's some code written that the browser processes that's saying, and again, this is a trial and error process. I'm sorry, some of you are probably like, why, like, where did that just come from? It's just things that you learn over time. And there's going to be certain things that are happening that you're not going to fully understand at the beginning because there's kind of a lot of processes that happen here. But HTML is just about a trial and error process that you gradually learn how things work. It's just like a foreign language. If you're trying to speak Spanish for the first time, you can say, ¿Dónde está el baño? But if you say something wrong, you can be close, and it just takes time until you say it perfectly. So yeah, but to reinforce what just happened there, why it now looks slightly different, I had not deleted all the elements of the page that we were starting to build from. And so I got some leftover CSS, I got some leftover styling from this page that I first realized when we actually saved it as a separate file. But anyways, and so then we now have saved our information as this HTML tutorial.html. Okay, and so now I'm actually going to start building in this tool. I'm going to switch out of the browser and switch into my Visual Studio Code. The reason for this is that I have automatic file saving. So for example, if I change this now from hey guys to hey all, and I save this file, which is I'm pressing just Control S to save the file. If I now refresh this web page locally, it's going to say hi all. And the point is that I'm saving my work locally now. So I have a file on my desktop that's called HTML tutorial, and it contains all of this it contains this information. You could do this again. I'm using Visual Studio Code. This is all that's in the file. I'm actually going to copy and paste this into the chat in case you guys want to start there. Thank you. So if you guys want to start, you can copy and paste this into a text file. Just save it as a .html file. It doesn't have to be you don't have to use this browser, or excuse me, this editor. You can also use a program like, I'm on a Mac, but I would use I think it's called, what is it called? Is it called Notepad, I think, right? Oh no, it's not called Notepad. I don't know, but there's, you can't use Microsoft Word, but definitely on Windows, there's a Notepad a Notepad program, and you just literally copy and paste this text into it and then save it as a .html. Yeah. So there's that. The next thing I wanted to, so there's a couple other things I do want to show you the CSS files, and I do want to show you images as well. We still have 32 minutes. So yeah. Let's start with an image. That's a little more fun. So this div, again, this is the div that has a blue background color. Let's add inside of this div an image. Okay. One thing I can do in HTML is I can actually have, I think, or does that only work in, I think that works. Nah, that may not work in HTML. I'm pretty sure that works, but I may be wrong about that. So, so I've added an image tag here, both an opening tag and a closing tag. I actually have to look at how image tags works in HTML. I'm gonna have to cheat myself, but this is how programming works. You can't memorize it all, and so we are constantly Googling stuff. On one second, we just got a tag here. Yes, okay. So for someone who's using a Mac, let me actually look that up. So Notepad definitely works for Windows, and it's not Notes. What is it called? So if you really want to code in HTML, what I really recommend is downloading that VS Code. But for today, so you can save whatever work you do locally, because the program I'm about to show you to just save the file is not going to have any. It's not going to have any extra features. It's going to be a raw text editor. Okay, it's called Text Edit. On a Mac, it's called Text Edit or Text Editor. And oops, I meant to write that to everybody. I'm sorry about that. So that's the Mac program, and on Windows, it would be Notepad. And then you just save the files as .html, and you can copy and paste that text that I've written in the chat. And then you should basically see this web page, which is what we've built. And you can edit it in that web page. Excuse me, you can edit it in that browser, but this Visual Studio Code is much nicer. You get this coloration. I can see. You just learn it with time. It's a lot nicer, but that's neither here nor there for now. So let's take a look at our images. How we do an image. So an image HTML images right here. Okay, source. That's the tag I was looking for. Okay, so in the image tag, there's two pieces of information. So we have the image tag, which is just like a div tag, but it specifies an image. And we have two things. One's called the source, which is what the name of the image or what the web address of the image is. And the other is what is called alt, which means if the image is not, which is short for alternate or alternative, which is basically if it's not able to find that image, if that image has been deleted or removed, or your internet connection's so bad it can't load the image for some reason, what text should display there instead. You have the option of not including this. So let's say we wanted a picture of, oops, sorry, remember, so now I had the Google tag there. I had the Google thing there. I'm actually gonna put it back to Passion Class. So let's say we wanted to have this Passion Class logo display here. So I'm gonna right-hand click, because I actually don't know what the web address of this image is. I'm actually going to use the browser, again, the inspector, just the way we were before, to figure out what the web address of the image is. So let's do that really quick. So we like this Passion Class logo. I highlight over this logo, and here I can see in this image tag what the source is. Okay, so let's copy and paste this source. It can be any image. You can go to Google Images, any image that you find, but this is just a web address of a specific image that I'm able to pull easily. So again, what did I do to get this image? just like other things, just like we were doing before, I went to the browser and I actually inspected this particular element, which jumped me right there. The other thing is if I had inspected a different element, I could actually search for the image using the image tag. Eventually it highlights the image I'm looking for. And I say, okay, what is the source of this image? And the source is this. Okay, so I want to copy that source text. So I've copied the source text. If I copy and paste in a new tab in my browser, here's just that raw image. What we want to do now is we want that to appear on our web page. We want to have an image on our web page. So I'm putting that here as the source. And let me make this a little bigger so you can see what I actually wrote. So this tag says, let's zoom out of here. That should be pretty good. This tag, the image tag has a source characteristic which contains a URL or a link to an image. So then I save my file and refresh this. Oh, and now we have the image there, although it's pretty ugly. It's showing it at a very large level. So how do we solve that? Anybody have any ideas how we solve that using things we've already learned? Okay, we heard size, yeah, but size isn't the right name of the property. What is the right name of the property that we're looking for? Use CSS, very good, exactly right. So let's set, for example, a width of 50%. Styling it, exactly. Style it smaller. So we're going to start with just setting it a width to 50%. Again, what that means is the maximum width is going to now be 50% of its parent element. So now, because its parent element, this image, oops, I'm sorry. Because this image is, why does it not like this? Working just fine. What is the issue? Is it because I have it like this? Yep, okay. So sorry. So what I did just do, and I wasn't sure if this would work or not. The other option you have is something like an image it doesn't need to have any child elements because the image, like unlike a div is a rectangular box, right? And so you can have other rectangular boxes or images within that. What we had 2 seconds ago that I deleted quickly without specifying it to you, so I apologize for that, is had something that looked like this. We had something that looked like this. Okay. So this work exactly, oops, no, now it looked like this. There we go. So this should work exactly, nope. What do I have wrong here? There we go. Third time's the charm. So unfortunately, HTML being a computer language, it's very particular. What I had a second ago is I accidentally had this extra closing tag here, which meant this was all just then raw text nested within my image. It was weird, not correct. If I get rid of this tag, now the tag closes here, which is correct. It opens on the image here and closes here. It's very particular, and as you first use HTML, you're going to be like, this is annoying. You're going to get used to it, but it's annoying and when you first start. And then here, so this opens the initial tag, closes the initial tag, and then this closes the whole element. Because an image doesn't need to have any elements nested underneath it, I also have the option of removing this tag and adding this backslash just before this closing tag. So I can have a closing tag here for the image, get rid of this. It's just a little bit prettier, but it doesn't really matter. And now I've saved this file. If I refresh the web page, nothing changes. So that's all I did. So I don't have a separate opening and closing tag for the image. It's all contained in one. And that's what this backslash followed by caret signifies. So that's that.
So when you have on all those, that one and the 3 below it with the backslash caret or the caret backslash, does that mean that all those are the closing of this design
Exactly.
of the page.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yep. So let's look for example at again, an A tag symbolizes a hyperlink. So if I click this link, it takes me to another website.
Okay.
So the A tag is opened by a caret, and then it's specified as an A tag. Then we have this href information, which specifies the website it's going to take us to. Then we have this closing tag. I don't know why why my formatter is putting it like this. I hate that. I'd much rather have it here. I think that's a very bad stylistic choice, but this is what my automatic formatter is doing. Anyways, I'd much rather have it like, I'd much rather have the opening and closing tags on the same line personally. But so I have an opening. So here's an opening tag, closing tag. And so this opens the element and closes the element. So everything within this A tag, like both of these divs, is contained within the hyperlink. So if I click anywhere on either of these divs, including this green background here, it should take me to that. It should take me on that link. And that's what we know by the A tags.
Okay. When you put the
within,
image next, then you close it out with the backslash and the caret. That closed out whatever you were doing with the image.
right, exactly. So there's no opening and closing tag for this element. It's just so the A has it has an opening element, which is this, and a closing element, which is this.
Okay.
The image, because I have this backslash here right before the closing tag, says I'm not going to include a closing tag. There's no child elements. There's no elements that are listed underneath the image in the structure. But alternatively, if that's, you don't have to worry about that. The other thing you can always just do is just have, and sorry, I don't know why it's auto-filling that, is you can have a closing tag like that. You can have the same closing tag that we had with the A, like this should work exactly the same way.
Okay, and then the last three div body HTML, are you closing out something from the top?
Yes. So this HTML, so every web page in the whole should have an opening HTML. I mean, sometimes browsers process it just fine if it doesn't have that. That's no problem. But it has an opening HTML tag, so it needs to have a closing HTML tag. Then, and this is just one of the things about HTML, you have a body. It doesn't really matter. They have the three elements of HTML, the three big sub elements, but I think it works just fine without it, if I'm not mistaken, are header, body, footer. And so you usually put your information within the body unless you have a specific header that you want to use, but your tags are header, body, footer. But honestly, as I was mentioning, you could do this just as well with divs. Like the body, it has some certain advantages that are advanced that don't really matter. But anyways, your question is very important and I'm giving too much information. So it opens with an HTML tag and closes with an HTML tag. It opens with a body tag and closes with a body tag. Then this one opens with a div tag, and this is referring again to the thing that has the background color of red, so it's here. And this div closes with a div tag, but every div that you open needs to have a corresponding div tag to close it. And every tag that you open needs to have a corresponding tag to close it. So the hyperlink starts here and it ends here. The div starts here and it ends here. Because if I move, for example, if I move this div tag, if I move this div tag down here, and I think it's going to be hard to understand, but
no, you're doing a great job. I actually knew nothing and I can understand exactly what you're saying and showing. Like I understand it. So thank you.
Cool. So if I move this div tag down here, now this div tag, or excuse me, this div, I don't know why I didn't like that, but this div starts here. It's the red background, and it incorporates all of this stuff inside of here. It incorporates all of this stuff inside of here because it's not closed until it reaches this second div tag. And you can see, even though we have another opening div tag and even another closing div tag, this div opens and this div then closes. So this is a unit itself. This div tag has to refer to the first closing div tag has to refer to the first or the last opening div tag. Let me repeat that. The first closing div tag has to refer to the last opening div tag. Similarly, the first closing A tag has to refer to the last opening A tag. Okay, so my point here is all I've done right now is moved this div tag from up here to down here. Okay, and now when I press save and refresh this page, this is all gonna become red here right now. Why did that just happen? It happened because, and this is the trickiest part of HTML. What I'm explaining right now is truly harder than I wanted to get into today. What has just happened is in the tree structure of HTML, just having one element that open and closed right here, I've now turned this into, for example, a parent element that contains all of these child elements. So, I mean, these don't align up perfectly, but this, this hi guys previously was just a rectangular block. And now it's a rectangular block that contains all of these rectangular blocks because it's not been closed until all the way down here. And so all of the rectangular blocks that are here, that all the rectangular blocks that it hits, or everything that it hits until it hits its closing tag, is contained within it. Just like, and this one, I mean, this is deep, so it's hard to see. So I'm going to save this and refresh it. So this is just closed. This was an easier example. So the easier example is this link contains all of the elements that are within it. So we have two div tags within the link. So the link contains both of these divs. Exact same thing, it's just a lot deeper. So everything, we set this background color to get red, and we close it just before the end of the web page. Everything has a black background color of red until we hit the end of the web page. So everything, unless it has a different background color because we specified a different background color within it. But now by moving this down here, we've set this, all of this is contained within this one element. Everything is contained within this one element. So I'm actually not going to follow up more on that point because it's a hard point and it's not something that we need at this level. I mean, if you got that, you're doing amazing. If you didn't get that, no worries. You will, that's a thing you have to practice with time. So I wanted to show images, and now we have 15 minutes. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to move this to a CSS file. So a CSS file, again, you can use the same editors. I recommend Visual Studio Code, but if you type this, and let me copy and paste this in here for the public. So if you could copy and paste this into your editor if you'd like. We're gonna now switch to a CSS file. So let's actually just start by saving the file. I'm gonna name it the same thing. I'm gonna call it tutorial CSS.css, or I'll just call it tutorial.css because that's how I'd really do it. So it has to end in .css. So I save that. There's nothing in here right now. But what we can now do is change. So what we do now is change the styling from like we can pull the styling out of the HTML, and there's some advantages to that that I'll actually explain right now. So the first advantage is if you have multiple elements that share the same stylistic features, then instead of specifying that styling for every element, you can just use the same, you can say access the same styling information. So for example, let's change this green background to a red background. Yeah, let's just do that. So now we have two elements with a red background. Okay. Rather than writing red background once, and again, that's just one specific thing, but if you wanted to, for example, let me go to Passion Class. On this Passion Class webpage, you can see that all of these things look close to identical. So every class that you want to take, if you wanted to learn some Dutch, or you want to learn some German, you want to learn some French, or again, you want to do self-improvement, whatever, all of these boxes, I do it, yeah, different ones, but if all of these boxes look the same, they look very similar. The photos differ, but apart from that, the styling is the same for all of these boxes. So the styling for this element is exactly the same as the styling for this element. The styling for this element is exactly the same for the styling for this element, and the same here. So that's the point. That's the advantage of the classes, which I'm about to show. That's the advantage of writing it in the separate file, is that I can say every element that is like this, make this text bigger and make this background red, and and make the font this, and so I can just say this is an element of this type, and so then it looks the same every single time. That's what we're doing here, rather than specifying it for every single one, writing out the characteristics every single time. So that's what the advantage of writing it in CSS is, as opposed to, or like writing it in a CSS file, as opposed to directly into the HTML. And just saves you a bunch of text and, stuff like that. So let me come back over here. So we've got here, this tutorial file. So let's say for everything we want to make the background color red, we'll call it red. Sorry, you actually start with an initial period, red background. And then you have a squiggly bracket to open and close. Okay. And you write in the text property, which is the exact same text property we wrote here. So I just copied and pasted it, background color red, and you close it with a semicolon. So that's everything that has a class name, and that's what this dot signifies. A class name of red background will have this property applied to it. So let's come over here and get rid of the style red background. Save this, refresh. That red background goes away. Now I add the style, excuse me, not the style property, the class property of red background, and save it. Now, why did that not work? Oh, I know why that didn't work. Of course that didn't work. Why didn't that work? I saved it, no red backgrounds here. The reason it didn't work is because I have not told my HTML to use this CSS file. So I have a CSS file called tutorial.css. Specify which CSS file to use HTML. I can't remember where it's written exactly. How to add CSS. Doc type HTML. Okay, here we go. This is what it needs to be called. So I've seen this before, so I know. Within the HTML, I think it just goes here. I can't quite remember. We have a link to a style sheet that should be called tutorial.css. Let's see if that works. I think it should now. Yes, it does. Okay, so I called it tutorial.css and it works. When I refresh the web page now, because we have this red background class, it's accessing the CSS and saying, hey, what's this thing with a red background? And that's what this class works. That's how this class works. So again, class is the name of the property is the same as the thing that follows the dot. So dot specifies class. There's other indicators. We're just going to look at class today. But yeah, so class, red background, and then everything inside these brackets. And for example, I could say, I could also say, you know what, red backgrounds, they really need beige text. So everything with a red background, I want to have beige text. And I save this file. I come over here, I refresh it. Now the text is beige with the red background. Now notice it didn't apply here. What I can do, well, actually that didn't apply here because of the link. Actually, there's two reasons it didn't apply there, but that's fine. Unfortunately, we're just gonna, but the same thing I can do here. I can get rid of this red background here. I still have the option of leaving the other style properties if I would like. And I can copy and paste in this red background information, save the file, the background stays red, and oh good, the text, the color did become beige because I've specified that everything here with a red background should be beige. So now I have the ability to quickly make a lot of elements that look similar, which you're like, you know, if you're making your personal website, that may or may not be the case. It frequently is, actually. I mean, look, most of the time when I'm on a web page, I need a lot of elements that look similar. So, you know, let's click on this page again. This element is very similar to this element, which is very similar to this element. Similarly, this element is very similar to this element, which is very similar to this element. And so, you know, and so on and so forth. So it is very, very, very common. This element is very similar to this element. So it is very, very, very common on web pages that you want to have elements that look very similar to each other. And that's why, and so that's why this is really useful. So again, one other thing I want to highlight to you, because it may seem trickier. I would recommend having your HTML and CSS file in the exact same location. And when I say location, these are both saved directly on my desktop. You could put them both in a folder on your desktop, both in a folder in your My Documents, whatever. But if they're in the same location, then you don't have to write like more information. You can just literally write the name of the CSS file. And same thing, like if you have an image, like if I save this image, for example, if I were to save this elephant image, the logo that I got from here, if I were to save this image to the same location, I actually don't have to, like, I'm accessing this right now on the internet, HTTP, that's how you know that, it's accessing it somewhere on the internet. But I could actually, if I had it saved here, I could literally just I don't have it saved locally, but if I did have it saved locally, I could just have it here. I could just have the .logo.png. So I'm going to copy and paste this CSS, this first little bit of CSS. So, and that's what you could do there if you wanted to do. So that's where we're at for today. So let me pause here. We got a couple minutes. Any questions, anything like that? I'm glad I'm getting some messages in the text. People are like, I'm following it. I got it. I'm very happy about it. I'm thrilled to hear it.
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
When you say, can you explain like what you mean by saving them in the same location again?
Yes, absolutely. So what I mean is when I click File, Save, these are literally just saved to my desktop. So
Okay.
HTML, I mean, sorry, my desktop is a mess. I gotta work on it. But like HTML tutorial is in the same location. If I wanted to have like a new folder that said web page, I could have a folder on my desktop that says web page. Now, if I save that file here and access that file in the web page, it doesn't work. you can see the because the styling is wrong. I need to add those. Like I need to come back over and put the files in the same location. So that, or alternatively, yeah, it's probably something you would naturally do anyways. I'm just saying that these links, like it just says tutorial.css, like it's looking to say, hey, in the folder that my web page is right now, which is in my desktop, in the folder that my web page is right now, is there a file with the name, with this? Otherwise, you're going to do some fancy stuff with some backslashes that tells your browser how to get there. But it's probably something you would naturally do anyways. Just make a folder that's called web page and save your HTML and your CSS files to the same folder. And then that solves that problem.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? Cool. Okay. Well, this was fun. This was a great group. Thank you. I hope you can get started now. I definitely make find, if you have a chance this weekend, like make a personal web page. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to be much, but it could just be, Julie's site, where, and the thing is, what you'll find here is most of the stuff that you do, a lot of times you just end up writing what you want to write. Hello. I mean, obviously, if it's Julie's blog about, life, a lot of it ends up being text. Why is that not saving right now? Oh, I know why, because this is the second file I just created. That's fine. Let me fix that. I'm going to reopen that. Also, if you want to become a web developer, you need HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Those are the 3 elements of web development. So please come. If you've got time there, you guys were a great group. I had fun. Let me know if you got anything else. And by the way, if you want to sign up for this class, I'm going to put this in here as well. It's programming for complete beginners. So yeah, I think you guys can see I kind of pull you through. I yank you through. I say, we're going to use this time well, I hope. So if you have a good experience this week, come next week and, have a second thing and you want to keep going, with me, then please do. And please feel free. So anything else before we wrap up? Cool. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. See you next time. Bye. By the way, this meetup is sponsored through my startup. I'm a founder of this startup, passionclass.co.